Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Reviews Stuff. And today is Movie Monday, and I am going to be reviewing, not a movie today, but a documentary series, Making a Murderer, Season 2 on Netflix. I love documentary series. I love documentaries. I've watched them for years and years and years. Some of my favorite documentaries of life are The Queen of Versailles, The Wonderful and Wild Whites of West Virginia is probably one of my all-time favorites. Stevie. I could go on and on and on. I love The Keepers. I love The Staircase that was recently on here, and I love Making a Murderer. I thought it was very, very well done. I also love the Eileen Wuornos, and if you like Making a Murderer, also on Netflix are two different documentaries about Eileen Wuornos, the female serial killer. And I think the first one is called The Life and Death of a Serial Killer. They're very, very well done. But she's the one that they modeled the Charlize Theron for Monster. That's who she was, Eileen Wuornos. But anyway, I digress. So let's get into this. I'm going to start doing regular Netflix series reviews on here because I love Netflix. I'm sure a lot of you like Netflix. People ask me to do reviews of Netflix series, so I'm going to start doing them on here. I'm currently on episode 5 of The Haunting of Hill House. So my next review of a Netflix series will be The Haunting of Hill House, and it will probably either be next Monday for Movie Mondays or later this week sometime. So stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching this channel. I'm having so much fun doing it and just getting to review all kinds of stuff. So let's get into this. I will tell you this, that I am actually in the process of setting up a special area just to do movie and television reviews that will feel a little bit, I don't know, more movie-centered, more professional for me in that setting. Because like I said, I want to do different settings in this channel. Okay. So I want to read to you, in case you don't know anything about Making a Murderer, the synopsis on Wikipedia. And it's not super long, but I just think to give a little bit of a background before I get into this. And this will really just be my commentary on this season. Making a Murderer is an American true crime documentary television series written and directed by Laura Ricardo and Moira Demos. It revolves around the story of Stephen Avery, a man from Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, who served 18 years in prison for the wrongful conviction of sexual assault and attempted murder, and who was again charged in 2005 and eventually convicted in 2007 for the murder of Teresa Halbach, and the connected story of Brendan Dassey, who is accused and convicted as an accessory in the murder. The first season mainly chronicles the period between 1985 and 2007, portraying Avery's 1985 arrest and conviction, his subsequent exoneration and release in 2003, the civil lawsuit Avery filed against Manitowoc County, his 2005 arrest, and then ensuing trial and conviction in 2007. It also depicts the arrest, prosecution, and conviction of Avery's nephew, Brendan Dassey, focusing on the accusations of coercion and attorney ineptitude. The second season explores the aftermath of both Avery and Dassey's convictions, focusing on Avery and Dassey's families, the investigation and findings of Avery's new attorney, Kathleen Zellner, which corroborates the thesis of Avery's innocence and him being framed for the murder of Halbach, and Dassey's legal team's efforts in arguing in court that his confession was coerced by prosecutors and his constitutional rights were violated. Okay, now I'm going to tell you before I get into this video, this response, this just my commentary on it. There is no way for me to do a review, and I'm not going to do a review of documentary series and movies and just sit there and be like, well, let me tell you it's going to be my feeling. It's going to be my reaction. So I like my comment sections to be a discussion. I think that we can have a discussion underneath there that is kind, and we don't have to be mean to one another, and we can have an open discussion. I think that's cool, right? Just like you were sitting there with your friend and you're like, well, I totally disagree with you or whatever, right? So I'm just going to tell you what I think about all this. First of all, my husband and I watched season 1 of Making a Murderer, I don't know, a couple years ago when it came out, 2 years ago, I don't remember when it came out. I had watched the first episode because I was hearing so much about it, and I was sitting in this living room right here, and I started watching the second episode, and my husband was watching it while we were eating, and he was like, this is really interesting. And I said, well, do you want to go back and watch the first episode? And he goes, no, you don't have to do that. And I go, it's no problem. It's really a good story. So we went back and watched the 10-part series, I think literally within 2 days, like a Saturday and a Sunday. We just, binge watched the whole thing. So when season 2 came out, I was extremely excited to see this, but I really didn't know what the season was gonna be about. I didn't really know what to expect. So the season is, it's all about the post-conviction appeals and hearings and everything like this. And let me tell you that this season is, I would say, so much more interesting to me because I am somebody that loves forensic crime stories. I love to watch like Dateline, 48 Hours. I love to watch documentaries about this stuff. And if you enjoy the forensic background of all of that and trying to find evidence, this season is probably the one that you're going to really like. You know, the whole story to me is so very sad. First of all, you have the story of Teresa Halbach, who is murdered. I feel like by the end of the series, you still do not know who actually killed this woman. And it's, you know, I think when we look, it starts off with a lot of criticism towards the documentary, and they kind of show that. You know, I think when we look at this not as an entertainment factor, not as a documentary, but we have to remember the victim in this case. And we always have to remember, you know, like last year, my friends and I, we went and did a paranormal investigation at a serial killer, his house here in Indianapolis, Herb Baumeister. And, you know, when it was said and done, it just was very sad to me. I felt like the victims have been kind of lost in the story and all of that. So, you know, I think that it's really important, and they do a very nice job, I think, in this season of showing Teresa Halbach who she is as a person. They have friends of hers talk. But at its core, this is really a season about Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, who is his nephew, and trying to get them out of this. It's very interesting because they show a lot of conversations coming from prison, and it's a lot of closed caption that you have to like read and, you know, whatever. That for me was the only thing that was just a little bit, I don't know, it brought it down a level for me because there was so much of it. But to have Stephen and Brendan in the show, you would have had to have had that on there. There was no other way, right? I will tell you that when I finished watching this series, and actually this was a conversation I was having with my best friend the other day, I said, if your child had been murdered, would you want to know, like, would it be good enough for you to be convinced by one trial or two trials? Or if all this other evidence had come out, would you really want to know at the core who had killed your child? And she said, without a shadow of a doubt, I would have to know who the person was that killed my child. It wouldn't be good enough for me if there was all this other evidence that came out. Now, one of the things that is interesting is at the beginning of the documentary, they talk about how they're criticized because they leave out a very important detail from the first season. Like in the first season, they left out a very important detail, which is interesting because it plays into the story of the second season. But what it also does for the viewer, and I don't know if they did this intentionally, but what it almost kind of creates, what's the word I'm looking for? An untrustworthy narrator, because you don't know then if the creators of the documentary are being honest with you. It makes you realize, I don't really know if what they're showing me is the whole truth or if they're just picking and choosing things for me. That being said, from an entertainment factor of watching a documentary, that did not take away from me. So for me, I will tell you, okay, the highlight, absolutely the highlight of Making a Murderer Season 2 was Stephen Avery's new attorney, who is an expert in getting exonerations, Kathleen Zellner. This woman, okay, let me just tell you, is so absolutely fantastic. And I was like, I've done this in my vlog, and I mean, she just, I sat there and watched her, and she's just like, you know, the fact that this got away in the state of Wisconsin just is absolutely baffling. I mean, she basically calls these people out, idiots left and right, cops, police officers, ex-attorneys, all this kind of stuff. I mean, she is so confident. And what I love about this woman, okay, is she tells her clients, she says to them, and she takes all these pro bono cases, the amount of work, first of all, that she does on a pro bono case that could be years and years and years is unbelievable to me, right? She tells her clients, she says, you're going to want to be innocent, because if I find out that you're not, I'm going to turn over any evidence that I find that will be used against you. And I love that about her. The second thing is, she says that yes, she is, you know, invested in the justice and finding justice for her client, but she really also, for the justice of the families and the justice of the victims, she really wants to find out what really went on and what really happened. And so Making a Murderer Season 2 is really the story of Kathleen Zellner, this amazing, unbelievable attorney. which very much reminds me of the TV show How to Get Away with Murder and her team of clerks, because Kathleen Zellner has a team of clerks, and they're all like these younger, like, I don't know if they're law students or just law clerks or what they are, but they're brilliant. They're all of them brilliant, and they come up with this stuff that I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, I mean, I've read murder mysteries for years and years and years in the way that she just is genius thinker. And by the end of the show, like I will tell you this, and this is a spoiler-free review. By the end of the show, I was a little upset that there was no kind of resolution, which I believe there will be a season 3 to this. There is kind of in the Brendan Dassey case. I will tell you this, do not go and Google anything before you watch a series. But in the Brendan Dassey case, there was some kind of resolution. His attorneys were fantastic too. I mean, but they're a completely different kind of attorney. And I don't know, Kathleen Zellner is just, she's such a standout person in this whole thing. And by the end of the series, I will tell you this, I know this is where I'm like, do I say this on video? Do I not say it? I'm not convinced Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey did this crime. I'm just not. And one of the things that she talks about in there that we never hear about in season 1 is that when you are, and I guess if you know anything about law or whatever, you would know this, that when you are convicted of a murder, you have the right to point the finger elsewhere and say, this person did it, or this person is a possible suspect. And they didn't do that in his first case. And so she basically recreates the crime. And I'm telling you, she recreates the crime to the point where you do have a lot of doubt at the end of the season of where, how it happened, where it happened, all of this kind of stuff that we never knew from season 1. It is so interesting to watch from a forensic point of view. But, at the same time, at the end of it, it's very, very sad. Not only is Teresa Halbach's, family still not really have any resolution. Stephen Avery really has no resolution. His family has has no resolution. His parents are getting much, much older. I think they're like 79 and like 80 when this is filmed. And it goes right up to the summer of 2018. And, Brendan Dassey's mother, she's left with just this shit sandwich, let me just tell you. I mean, if I was that woman, I wouldn't know what to think anymore. But what's interesting at the end, what comes out from her is people start telling a little bit throughout the season. And that's what's interesting is stories change, people tell some things. And I don't know, I was left at the end of the season like, what do we do now? When I watched The Keepers, I was left very much with this unresolved feeling at the end of it. But at the same time, I had to remember that this is not just entertainment. This is these are people's lives. This is a real story. There are real victims. There are real victims' families. There are, and who is the victim? Is it somebody that's accused of being, and they're innocent? Is it somebody that actually did a crime? And, and they're out there and still doing it? Is it the family of Teresa Halbach? You have to remember in all of this that there are real people that are being affected by that, and that this isn't just entertainment at the end of the day. That this is really somebody's life and somebody's story. And I don't know that there ever really is resolution for that. We may never see a documentary on Stephen Avery making a murderer where at the end of it, we're like, okay, now we finally know. You know what I mean? I will tell you this, and this is my belief after watching the entire season. I believe this whole thing, I am not convinced that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey had anything to do with this crime. I'm not. And I believe that this has a lot to do with the money that Stephen Avery was going to get paid out for the wrong conviction of the rape and assault from, 1985, 1995, that he was going to get paid out because it was upwards of $38 million that the county was going to have to pay him. Now, let me tell you something, okay? There's a woman that is so fantastic next to Kathleen Zellner in this whole thing, and her name is Debbie something, and she is the county coroner. When you hear her story in the 10th episode, it is literally about a 3-4 minute story. When you hear her, it just changes everything, right? And you realize in that moment, is this really all about money? It took me back to that moment in Fargo, at the very, very end, when she looks in the backseat and she says, all of this just for some money. It's so sad, or something to that effect. And I love that movie, And when you think about that this could really all be about money, ruin families, you know, all this kind of stuff. I mean, some of the evidence that is brought up is just like mind-boggling that it never made it into the first court case. It just, when you find out the stuff that Kathleen Zellner finds out, I mean, you're like, how did this not make it into the, I mean, how did they not see this in the first case? How did they not go look for this kind of stuff? So, you know, the whole story overall is just very, very sad. I mean, it's basically a documentary of no answers resolved is what it is. I don't know. If you guys have seen it, put in the comment section below what you think. What was your take, your overall take from this documentary series? And like I said, I will be back later in the week with my review of The Haunting of Hill House. I would give season 1 of Making a Murderer, I would give it a 4.1 out of 5, and I would give Making a Murderer Season 2 a 4.7 out of 5. I thought it was fantastically done. I thought it was 10 times more interesting than the first season. There were some things I would have liked to have seen differently. It seemed kind of rushed at the end to get it done, to get it out in 2018. I don't know if that was maybe a movie thing or a production thing, but it seemed kind of rushed to me at the end. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Leave it in the comment section below. I love you, and I will see you later. Bye.